So in our last lesson, we talked about rounding, and we talked about that being a type of estimation that has specific rules for determining what value it's closest to. And so we are going to start thinking about compatible numbers. Now, if you've ever heard the idea of friendly numbers, that's a connection I really like to make when we're thinking about compatible numbers. And very much like with rounding, compatible numbers can help us estimate a solution to a problem. And that can come up again. I talked about the idea of when you are planning for a trip or going to the grocery store, we don't come up with exactly how much money we need to the cents. Okay? What we do is we come up with an estimation of about how much we will need. And we usually want that to be more than we'll need because we don't want to be short any money. So these are concepts that we use all the time in the real world. So what is a compatible number? I said I like to connect it to friendly number. They are numbers that are slightly adjusted to create groups of numbers that are easy to compute mentally. So let's do a couple examples of a compatible number to begin with. So if I was thinking about the number 395, and I wanted to come up with a compatible number that's easy to work with, well, 395 is really close to being 400. So I'm going to round that and change it to 400 because it's more compatible. It's easier to work with. Okay? And then what if I had the number 215? Well, 215, I know, is not very close to being to 300 yet. So I'm going to say that's closer to 200. So now I've found their compatible numbers. And why this is helpful is because let's say I was paying bills, for example, right? And I needed to know how much of my income needed to go to these bills. Well, if one bill is $395 and the other was $215, I can turn them into compatible numbers and see that, well, 400 plus 200, I can do that mentally. I know that easily that that's 600. So I know that my bills are going to be really close to 600. Now, that is one way that we use it in real life. But if we're thinking about math, well, how do I use that in math? It's also a great tool to help us when we are asked to come to an estimation or think about what is an answer about, or if we are trying to make sense of the problem to know if we are close to the correct answer. So let's use our example from paying our bills and revisit that. So if I was asked to add 395 plus 215, okay. Now I've already come up with my estimation using compatible numbers. So I know that I should have an answer that's fairly close to 600. And if it's not, then I know that I need to go back and rework my stuck point to see where did I miss a regrouping somewhere? Did I miscount? What was the error that I made? Okay, so we know that when we're adding, we start over here. So 5 plus 5 is 10. I'm going to regroup that 10 over to the tens place. So 9 tens plus 2 more tens would be 11. So regroup that to the hundreds now. 300 plus 200 is 500 plus 1 more gives me 600s. So the exact answer here is 610. And if you look back at our estimation, 600 is really close to 610. So we can probably be pretty confident that our answer is correct here. So let's try this with subtraction. So let's say I'm given a word problem that wants me to subtract 1,633 and 718. All right, so when I round, I might end up with a different answer compared to when I use compatible numbers. They are very closely related, but when I think about compatible numbers, I'm looking for the friendliest number that I can use to help me solve it mentally. So I'm going to look at the 718 first, okay? And rather than rounding that all the way down to 700, I think 720 would be a number that I could probably use to subtract fairly easily in my head. And so now 1,633, now I want to make this as compatible or friendly to work with as I can. So I'm going to round it or turn it to 1,630. So in this case, you could see I was kind of rounding to the nearest tens place to help me. So now I can say, well, 0 minus 0 is 0. 3 tens minus 2 tens leaves me with 1 10. Okay, now I do see that I will have to regroup here, but if I widen it up to see 16, well, 16 minus 7, I know is 9. So my actual answer here should be relatively close to 910. And now we can go over here and see. Now you can see there's a lot of more than one regrouping I'm going to have to do here. So this one's going to be not one that I can solve in my head easily, whereas here this is one that I could work out without having to write down and do a bunch of regrouping on paper. So now we want to know the exact answer. So I can't take 8 from 3. So I'm going to go over to the tens place. I'm going to break one of those tens into 10 ones, which gives me 13 now. So now I can say 13 minus 8 is 5. Okay, and now 2 tens are all I have left. And if I take one away, that leaves me with 1. So 16 minus 7 is 9. So we can see that 915, our exact answer here, is really close to what we got when we were using our compatible numbers to estimate.